Hello again. A few months ago, Britain's House of Commons passed the Terminally Ill Adults End of Life Bill, which will make provision for the lethal poisoning of the elderly and sick. This idea is not new and has an unfortunate link with the Holocaust. We are most of us aware that during the Second World War, the Germans used cyanide to kill many people at the extermination camp of Auschwitz. Some of us also know that the use of gas to kill people felt to be surplus to requirements was pioneered in Nazi Germany with the disposal of the incurably ill or disabled. What hardly anybody remembers today is that this scheme was the brainchild of one of the most distinguished German scientists of the 19th century, who was advocating the use of cyanide in this way when Adolf Hitler was still at school. Ernst Haeckel was professor of zoology at the German city of Jena in the 19th century and an enthusiastic supporter of Charles Darwin's theory of evolution, which he believed required that the very ill and incapable should be removed from the gene pool, as this happened naturally in the animal kingdom. In a book published in 1904, Haeckel sets out clearly the blueprint followed 30 years later by the Nazis. The title of The Wonders of Life, a particular study of biological philosophy, is probably not meant to be ironic, but in retrospect we can hardly view it as being anything else when we think of the events brought about by those who acted on the explicit advice contained in the book. Haeckel makes no bones about his straightforward approach to eugenics in a practical sense, saying, many experienced physicians who practice their profession in a spirit of sympathy and without dogmatic prejudice have no scruple about cutting short the sufferings of the incurable by a dose of morphia or cyanide of potassium when they desire it. Very often this painless end is a blessing both to the invalids and their families. However, other physicians and most jurists are of the opinion that this act of sympathy is not right or is even a crime, that it is the duty of the physician to maintain the life of his patients as long as he can in all circumstances. I should like to know why. Hmm, that's interesting. That's pretty well what's being proposed in the assisted dying bill that will soon become law in this country. To find a German professor writing in this vein in the 20th century, in the country which organised and carried out the Holocaust 40 years later, is chilling and helps to explain why eugenics fell into such disfavour in the latter half of the last century. Let's read about the kind of people that the good professor had in mind. We must class as a traditional dogma the widespread belief that man is bound under all circumstances to maintain and prolong life, even when it has become utterly useless, a source of pain to the incurable and of endless trouble to his friends. Hundreds of thousands of incurables, lunatics, lepers, people with cancer, etc., are artificially kept alive in our modern communities, and their sufferings are carefully prolonged without the slightest profit to themselves or the general body. I do hope that viewers have noticed the logical trick being played upon them here. To begin with, Haeckel speaks of assisted dying when suffering people want it. He says, cutting short the sufferings of the incurable by a dose of morphia or cyanide of potassium when they desire it. This is precisely what the new law allows for in this country. Later, though, he talks in a broader sense of lunatics and people with cancer and remarks that their lives are useless. This means that he's advocating that the state disposes of them, willing or not. In 1940, the Nazis, acting on a direct order from Hitler, began murdering disabled children. This was done by gas chambers using carbon monoxide gas. Later, the killing was expanded to include adults with disabilities and mental illnesses. These were the lunatics, referred to by Ernst Haeckel in 1904. 2 years later, the Nazis heeded Haeckel's advice about the use of cyanide for murder. In 1942, the first murders were carried out at the Auschwitz camp using hydrogen cyanide. From the eugenics of the Victorian period to the mass murder of the Holocaust was a smooth, continuous, and direct transition. It is to be hoped that Haeckel's views on the best way to deal with cancer patients, say people like Esther Ranson, who's in the final stages of the disease, are not generally adopted. With the awful example of where such ideas led in the past, one might think that we should be very cautious about adopting such schemes in the modern world. In the description to this video, I give a link to an online translation of Haeckel's book so that viewers can check the quotations which I give for themselves.